Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Lab Podcast. Today, Kel and I are going to be talking about obesity. Is it a disease or is it not? That is the question. But before that, Kel, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. I don't know. I've been in this like funk since the election that I can't seem to shake, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. So, yeah. And Dolly got me up at the ass crack of dawn.
That certainly doesn't
She does
help.
this thing where it's just one gentle lick on the face, and then she starts barking at you.
She's like, here's your warning and here's the alarm.
Yep.
I kind of wish my alarm would like lick my face before it went off completely. It's just like a little friendly reminder of, hey, it's gonna get real loud in a second. Uh,
Better wake up, or it's gonna be worse.
yeah. Oh man. So yeah, the election funk. I feel like it's systemic. Definitely a lot of people are feeling that way, and I think it's just it's this weird also place where you're trying to stay informed, but you don't want to like ruin your mental health on top of it. So you're kind of forced to like be in it to a degree because you can't just check out and be like, I don't know what's gonna happen because things are happening pretty quickly. But
For real. Well, and it's like I feel like you can't really escape it because it's like some new disaster feels like it's happening every day or and
yeah,
stuff. So it's like, which I guess is what the more of what you were saying already. But it yeah, it's just been disheartening. But
it's a
trying
lot.
to join in with community, talk to more folks, you know.
Yeah, making that bubble as we talked about sooner. But man, it's a lot harder to make a bubble as adults because especially when you work at home, like basically you're my bubble because you're the closest thing I have to a coworker. You don't make friends the same as an adult, and you have to really try and really put yourself out there, and it feels like dating, and I just am not. I don't like it. It's like, hey, friend, do you also like to lift and work most hours of the day and like maybe hang out, but just to lift?
Yeah, well, and I'm sure you do the same. Is like now I'm just like talking to the dog, and it's like, oh, you ready to go to work? Okay.
You're like, oh, what do you want to listen to today on our commute to the chair?
To the chair.
Oh man, yeah.
Too funny.
I think it
How
doesn't
are you doing?
help too with that. I'm,
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
probably basically same. It doesn't help the uncertainty, the weather. I feel like the season change has really been impacting me more the last few weeks because the darkness, and it's been raining a bit, so I can't ride my boosted board to the gym or like to the coffee shop, and that was like my biggest mood lifter. And so to not have that, it's like, man, because that was one thing about the summer. Of course, it sucks because it's hot, but once you get outside, you get some sunshine, and you're just cruising on your board, and you feel like for at least a second that like nothing else matters, and you can be present for a second. But yeah, so now it's a struggle, lacking some sunshine even in California. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just been one of those years. I'm ready for it to be over, but at the same time, I'm not sure what's coming. So it's like, I don't know what I'm ready for. Like, I hate this year, but what the fuck is next year gonna look like, you know?
Yeah, I just am really putting hope into just continuing on and putting your best self out and and just hoping for the best. It's really all you can do, and that's what I've been keep going back to. I'm like, just try to control your part. That's all you can do, and
Yes.
making the most of that front. It is funny though because I feel like the in the community, like you're so excited to see folks, and like you're like, oh hey, how are you? They're like, you're like, and their response is always like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
all right. And so I do feel like everybody is having very similar experiences. So I
Yeah,
guess that is nice to know that you're not the only one kind of going through it. And um,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I know when I was doing client check-ins on Monday, it was pretty much every check-in people were, it was sinking in. I think maybe it took a few or a couple weeks for it to really sink in at first. There's like stages of grief or acceptance or whatever. It's just like first there's like not necessarily the shock for everyone, but there's like, okay, this is reality again. And then there's like, the anger and then there's the sadness and then there's just the depression, the acceptance. You're like, okay.
and then with next week being Thanksgiving already, somehow, I think that's
Yeah.
also bringing up a lot of fear and anxiety and anger for folks who have to go home to maybe people they don't agree with.
Yeah. Definitely a more charged political time, even worse than usual. Like before, it was always like I don't discuss politics at Thanksgiving, and now it's like, are you spending Thanksgiving with people with different politics? It's like it's so impossible, So
Yeah,
yeah,
like the
but
elephant in the room, swallowing up all the oxygen.
yeah, yeah, it's a lot.
Fine.
Mm-hmm. Super fun.
But,
um,
we'll get through it. We always do.
yeah, we will. Even if we, unfortunately, rewind backwards in some way, shape, or form. We've been there before. We'll push forward again. Do we want to? No. Is it easy? No. But what other choice do we have? So
Exactly.
just gotta pick yourself up by your bootstraps.
I have to, I know it's probably super annoying to describe memes over audio when I'm not a good storyteller in the first place, but I have to share one more that I saw, and it was something along the lines of when someone tells you like how emotionally evolved you are, and the response is, "Thanks, it was either this or death." That's kind of what I feel like.
That's how like sometimes I feel about when there's those kind people that tell you like you're so brave for transitioning. I'm like that's my response. Like
Exactly.
okay. Thanks. Cool. But yeah. So should we dive into another uplifting
Yeah.
topic?
Yeah, let's go into the topic because we're going off rails. I,
I mean, we can keep going at that all day, but I don't know that other people would enjoy that much. So yeah, obesity. There's a little bit of a debate slash, I think a little debate between the fitness industry or just people in general. So right now, obesity is classified as a disease, like officially, yes. But there's still the debate out there. Is it a disease? Like what made it classified as a disease, and is it good? Like, what are the pros? What are the cons? And how the fuck did we get here? So yeah, Kel, what do you
yeah.
think? So you want to start us off?
Sure. So I think this is a really complicated topic, which is why I was excited to talk about this in kind of a more of a long form discussion type way. Because I do think that there are pros and cons, and they both have a lot of validity. Um, and I don't think necessarily that the answer is going to be a clear black or white necessarily, but I do think. Oh, sorry. Everybody has the same goal here, right? So whether we're classifying it as a disease or not, we're trying to help people solve this issue. Um, and on one hand, it can help us by recognizing it as a disease because we can possibly you know, get some prevent it from happening or treat folks who are struggling better.
Yeah,
But on the other hand, are we setting people up for failure by calling it a disease and taking the responsibility and the um, I don't what's the word I'm looking for, the buy-in away from folks. I think we can kind of, I don't know, how do you want to do this? Do we want to go kind of like point by point in like the pros and
Yeah,
cons of?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm trying to think. So it's just like, should I go over like the definition of like what
Yeah,
disease
yeah,
is
yeah.
just to start and be like, this is,
Oh, that's a
yeah.
great idea. Let's get us into some.
Um, so a disease is defined as an impairment of the normal functioning of some aspect of the body with identifiable signs or symptoms. I dropped my fidget toy here.
I figured because I have this.
um, and so basically, it was classified as a disease because it's needing medical intervention more and more. And so I feel like that's, part of the pros is that it does allow for people to have access to medical care for those who need it, whether that's medications, therapy, or surgery. And I do think we often forget about the therapy aspect of it. That is part of classifying it as a disease, which we know a lot of it is, past traumas, mental health situations going on. So I feel like those are like the pros of, you're able to get help if you need it. Cons, like, you mentioned, I feel like you can put people in this helpless state of being like, there is no other way for me to do this besides if I'm taking medication, having surgery, that sort of thing. Do I see it as cheating if people do that? No, but I think we need to be careful about the extent of medical intervention and really evaluating people and the severity of it and figuring out which route to go from there and not just jumping on like the medication, instantly sort of thing. Sorry, I kind of just like took that off in my own direction. So feel free to push me back on track where we need to be.
So when I think one of the issues that when it comes to like getting people treatment is that there needs to be some kind of standardized system before we get to medication. And I know that kind of sounds rough because it means delaying someone's care, but I think if we slow down a little bit before hopping straight to a pill and look at some of these lifestyle changes, I think then people could save money and not be on a pill. So I, I
Yeah.
think I think also that that's an issue with our healthcare system in general is that we're very quick to jump to medication before any kind of other interventions.
Right. And like not to mention you have to stay on these medications because when you come off of them, majority of people gain the weight back. Um, Two, they come with side effects. There's always potential side effects to any medication that you take. There's some pretty gnarly side effects to, weight loss drugs and that sort of thing. And then also not to mention, it's really frustrating because you don't know what to do. You have your hands tied because essentially, I feel like this is a modern day disease that didn't used to exist because we had to hunt and food was scarce. Or even if you think back before, processed foods were like really big, the occurrence of obesity was drastically less. And obesity was just like you might have seen someone who was chubby, like, and it was kind of rare. And now I don't know the statistics. I should have looked it up, but I feel like it's at least 50% at this point. And it's not like this shaming thing. It's the fact that we're a product of our environment and there's genetic drivers, right? There are people who are predisposed to being overweight or to obesity. Just, it's fact, there's genetic predisposition, but it's like genetics load the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. And we've created this environment that, people are addicted to food. We have highly palatable processed foods everywhere. We have sedentary lives. And so I have a problem the most with, I'm not against GLP-1 medications, but the fact that, the government essentially created the problem and now is selling the solution. It's just
As a pill. Yeah.
yeah, or injection, and it's just like
Yeah.
we so badly cannot change our food system because we have people addicted to these foods and they're cheaper, and some people don't have healthy foods available, so that now we've resulted just having to come up with medications in order to treat the problem that has been created, when we know if we didn't have all these foods available. And I know it's controversial to say, like, oh, let's just get rid of processed food because you're taking out personal choice in that. But if we didn't have the food system the way it was, we wouldn't necessarily be needing to go to these extreme routes of surgery, medication, that sort of thing. Lifestyle changes do work. Issue is not everyone is the same, and not everyone has the same opportunities. And there's differences in satiation from person to person. Some people, like I mentioned before, of the analogy of different dog breeds, even you have to watch their weight. French bulldogs will eat anything and everything. If you leave a bag out, they're gonna eat the whole fucking thing. They don't care if they get sick or whatever. Chihuahua, you can leave the food out all day long and they'll just pick at it as they get hungry. And I feel like that is no different for humans. Some people just have bigger appetites and have a harder time, and that's evolutionary wise. And back in the day, they would have survived longer. They would have been the ones, they're more predisposed to storing fat so they could live when there's famine. And people with faster metabolisms would die because it's like food is scarce. So it's just hard because it's like, what is the solution? We need changes like government level. And I know that's this like RFK situation, but like, how do we do that without also being crazy about it? And I don't know. Sorry, that was a rant.
That's okay. Well, but I think, because you mentioned the food system and having to change the food system, which I completely agree. But I think that there's another system that's playing into this, and that is fucking capitalism, because
Yeah.
it is sucking up all the time. So I know me and you have talked about this before, but I think we've became so accustomed to this convenience factor, especially when we feed ourselves. No, not very many people I know, unless they have went through some kind of fitness journey or are very passionate about cooking, are consistently making their own food at home every day. People are buying food, and people are getting food delivered to their doors. Like it's not just for pizza anymore, right? So we've created this need for speed to feed ourselves fast and get it done. But and then we've backfilled all that time. So it's already accounted for. We can't even slow it down if we wanted to, because we've already booked ourselves for everything. And that's, maybe you're doing fun things, but probably you're working, or you're picking up your kids, or you're doing some other activity that is kind of required of life and living in this society. So especially like if you working 2 jobs and trying to take care of yourself and live life, and then you're also trying to lose weight and go to the gym, how are you going to have time for that in the day? There's just simply aren't enough, like the math doesn't math. Right.
No.
And it is one thing to say like, yes, everybody can reprioritize and make time if they really wanted to, but sometimes you can't, and that is life. And especially in this kind of time of such great inequality.
Right. And it's in the same way that basically modern day life is a breeding ground for disease. Like it's also a breeding ground for mental health issues. Because if you think, how many people are depressed? Like depression is at all time high. And it's because of how we have to live in order just to get by. And so if you think, if we, didn't have, all the pressure of capitalism and everything, we're not only, like, even if you do have time in the day, how emotionally fucking drained are you to where you're going to be like, yes, I'm going to go work out now. And I know that's what we basically have to do, but like, way to just make life suck worse, And especially if people are not seeing the benefits from it right away, and we have that instant gratification, it's just like a constant clash. So if someone's exercising for like a week and they're like, I'm more exhausted, and obviously you're not going to see the benefits of exercise in a week. So then you just stop, and it's just there's just this no hope thing, and I think maybe that's why they've brought in these medications. But is that really the answer? I feel like it's just a band-aid for what we cannot fix right now, um,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Well, I think it's a band-aid for what the government doesn't want us to fix.
Yeah.
um, because I don't necessarily, because yes, I think there is personal choice in a lot of in everything, right? But
Yeah.
a lot of times our hands are tied, and especially for when you're in affected population, especially with this election cycle, it is fucking hard. I feel like I'm dissociated most of the time. Like that is free. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just really hard to. It's hard. It's I.
It's fucking hard. All of it, every day. Um, so that leads to another thing of food being a coping mechanism. Just how, some people might turn to drugs. We know that addiction is a disease. People have predispositions to addiction and having addictive qualities or characteristics. Same thing I feel like goes for obesity. Again, genetics of the gun, environment pulls the trigger. If there was no alcohol, if there was no heroin, if there were no drugs, we would not have drug addicts because it just wouldn't exist. So it's just like in the same way that drug addiction would not exist without drugs, obesity probably would not exist without food drugs. Like the drug of food, the coping mechanism of
Right.
choice. That's like not drugs, but it's still a coping mechanism, and it has its own effects.
Well, and it makes it so much like food is a lot harder to be addicted to than heroin because you have to have a certain amount of food, right? So you have to eat it. You don't have to take a certain amount of heroin to keep
Right.
going. And yes, we can talk about how like the food drugs would be like more like processed foods and stuff like that. Um, of course, but it's just it's very hard when it's so incorporated into society. Um, uh, and I feel like we're kind of getting off topic.
I wouldn't say that. I think it's, because when it comes to the GLP-1 drug specifically, um, there's a few things with it. One, I sometimes have issues with doctors who open these clinics and are maybe not making money off the selling the drugs specifically or in isolation, but they are still getting money off of those patients that are coming to see them if they're advertising these drugs. Um,
Mhm.
and then it's like another form of, God damn it, there's another form of capitalism. We're capitalizing on obesity by using these drugs. I had another point that I was going with there.
The thumbs up got you.
It always does. I'm waiting for the balloons still. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that it's this vicious cycle. Oh, yeah, I was going off how uh, it takes away people's like independence of or empowerment of making changes because it gives this like you can't resist these foods, you just can't do it on your own because they're going to be here, and since you can't do it, you should take this medication. And I feel like that might be true for some. uh, Obviously we have some who are more severely obese than others, but it's not impossible, and I think we just need to give it more time. And in the same way we have screening for gastric bypass surgery, I feel like we need to have that same type of screening with GLP-1 medications. Maybe that's a certain amount of time where you need to lose X amount of weight before they'll prescribe it to you, because it's going to take those habit changes regardless. And we know it's not a magic pill. They do have to make some changes in order to still see progress on these, with these weight loss drugs. It's still calories in, calories out. It just helps you eat less, and it helps, like the food noise. So you're not thinking about food constantly. Um, so I think there just needs to be more gatekeeping. It's like,
Well, well, and I think maybe because I agree with you 1,000%, it does take away people's empowerment, and it's essentially not essentially just telling people that they were weak and that they can't do it. And I completely agree with you. But I think with the gatekeeping, they could also do things that could like kind of pair with it. So right, so do the treatment, and then you're meeting with a nutritionist so that you can stay consistent. But I think one of the major flaws in the system is that we fail to see how many things are interacting together, not just because we're not just changing one variable, right? We're changing the system. And they're not looking at the kind of interconnections that are going through things. We're not treating people for the disease, even if
right.
we want to count it a disease, because we're not completely treating everything. We're treating this one little thing. We're trying to make the symptom go away, but we're not going to fix anything that caused it.
Right. Yeah. I think, one other major change that I would love to see outside of just trying to remove food dyes and shit from food is we need to change who and how we're marketing things to, because there is so much shit marketed to children and they're the most susceptible. It's almost like misinformation on the internet, and people as adults cannot sort through that shit. So then you have kids walking through the grocery aisle and there's cartoons and they're all at eye level for kids. The kids' cereals, always eye level. There's a reason why the healthier, quote unquote, healthier cereals up top, because like almost no one can see them, but some adults can. If you're over 5 foot, I'm an elf height. Uh, so like, it's just like the marketing. I feel like there should be regulations of how things are able to be marketed. I think the same thing with pharmaceutical drugs. I think we're one of the only countries that actually has a direct to consumer marketing. We have commercials constantly for pharmaceuticals, GLP-1 drugs included. So I think there just needs to be more around that. That could be a great start, because especially with the kids, they do
The
not
easy one too.
know. Yeah, they don't know any better. We shouldn't be able to put cartoons with like really shitty, unhealthy food and being like, I'm your favorite character. This is why you like. Kids probably don't even know that they want the food. They just really like that cartoon or whatever. And they're like, well, then I want a piece of that. Um, that would be like a tremendously bigger change than removing food dye from something, in my opinion. But yeah,
Yep, I agree. I agree. I did look up that the statistic. According to the CDC, the obesity rate in the United States for adults is 40.3%
which is
as of August
crazy.
2023.
That's not even overweight. That is obesity.
Mm-hmm.
Does it say
The
kids?
highest rates are among adults ages 40 to 59, 46.4%.
How about children? Do you got that statistic?
Let's see.
Because that one is even
Let's
more
see.
sad, because it's like they don't necessarily have control.
19.7%
Okay.
of children and adolescents in the United States are obese, which is 14.7 million children.
Oof. That's a lot.
That's a lot. That is a lot. Um, yeah, and it's a big old bummer. And I
Yeah.
think that especially I feel like the trends these days, especially as more people are working from home or remote, as we're moving a little less, is what I would expect to
Yeah.
see.
A lot
That is
less.
completely pulled out of my ass, to be frank. But I know from clients and from just talking to people in general, they just notice how much less they move when they work from home.
Yeah.
I hear it a lot. So
Yeah, because you're not even like parking far away to walk to the office. You're not walking out to get lunch. You're not, walking to get
even to
home.
the
You're not.
restroom.
Yeah. I mean, I get some pretty good steps walking to the restroom at home, but um, yeah, it definitely, I'm moving a lot less than when I worked in a kitchen. That was like 10,000 steps, no problem. Uh, so you have to make a conscious effort to change things. And oh yeah, I was gonna say there is one other pro to like classifying obesity as a disease. Just randomly popped in my head because I always want to make sure to address this one. Um, you know, the stigma around it obviously is big, and I in no way, shape, or form want people to feel shame around it. And there's such a fine line between wanting someone to know that they do have control and then also, putting all of the blame on them and being like, it's easy. You just have to do XYZ. It's multifactorial. It's complicated. It is not black and white. It's hard. I wouldn't say it's like, yes, you have choices that you get to make. That's not to say those choices are easy. It's not to say that like you can't change your usual choices. But it's also not entirely your fault in the sense that we haven't grown up as educated about nutrition. We've, taken the programs out of the schools and just made it a lot harder to refrain from certain foods. And again, like we mentioned, the mental health aspect being huge. And when you have nothing fucking good in your life and someone wants to take away your favorite comfort food, like who wants to do that? And you have to find something else in life that gives you purpose and you're not just like living to eat. That's an awful life. But unfortunately, that's reality for a lot of us. But again, we're not exactly allowed to find other enjoyments in life because we're working our asses off just to survive. So again, we come back to this point of what is the solution? How do we make changes? And it's not something that I would ever want to shame someone about. It's not something that I want to add more to the stigma. It does not make anyone less of a human being. It doesn't make anyone less than if you are overweight or struggle with obesity. It's just like any other health issue that we come across. It's like, what are some solutions? How can we fix the root cause? I think that's what we're still just, I don't fucking know, because all we can do as coaches is teach people better habits, nutrition habits, that sort of thing. And I feel like that's all we can really do because there's no way we can go in and, change what the government is doing and get some subsidies for whole foods instead of just, processed foods and corn and shit. And so it's like sometimes as coaches, I feel like we feel powerless and we know it's not easy. But I also want to empower people and be like, you can change this. It's gonna be a long journey, not entirely going to be, you know, all sunshine and rainbows. But again, it's worth it in the end for your health. Just like you have to dig deep, stay patient, and wait for those benefits. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was really well said. The stigma and the shame is not what we're here for. You wouldn't shame or stigmatize anybody with any other disease or um, difference, because you can also, like, we won't get into, like, you can't determine that someone is super sick just by what they look like. We all know this. Um, so yeah, I think it's a very complicated topic, and there there's a lot of things that you can do, but there's a lot of things that are completely out of your control. So focusing on what you can control and taking those small steps to get there will really benefit folks more than anything else.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's about health. That's the thing to hammer home because if this was like an epidemic of anorexia, we'd be wanting to talk about that too. And I know that was a thing, like especially like the 90s era. I feel like it was more, I mean, it's still a thing, obviously.
Yeah.
Uh, but at the same time, it's hard because we know that eating disorders are here. And then technically, I guess obesity could be classified as an eating disorder, just on the other opposite spectrum. But like it, being able to like approach and educate on things, geared towards someone being overweight is hard when you have people who are like, no, I can't consume this content because like I have the other problem. And it's just like, I always want to remind people sometimes some content information is not for you and you have to like nuance and context or a thing. And so if you struggle on the other end, this this podcast is not for you. Um, I don't know why I started going off on that tangent. Just like came in my head. Like, oh yeah, anorexia is also a bitch. Don't do that. That will
Don't do that
also
either.
control your life and is not healthy because that can also kill you. So not eating is not the answer. Again, it's health. It's not just, this isn't about what you look like. It's just not.
Not at all.
No.
Is there anything else you wanted to bring up on this topic?
Um, trying to think. Hmm. I think that's,
Oh, I did have one other thing, actually.
let's
So
go.
I think right now, the way that they classify obesity, because it is considered a disease, is using the BMI,
Mhm.
which we know is a flawed system. So I do think that if they want to continue classifying this as a disease, that we should have a better way of collecting data and
Yeah.
using and having actual numbers and like thresholds um,
Yes.
to help folks, because we all know that BMI is trash, not just for people who struggle with obesity, but it even for people who have like a lot of muscle, that your BMI is always crazy off. So
Yeah.
I think that that was the other thing I wanted to mention, was that this obesity idea is all going to, everybody's going to have a different picture in their head, but that's not how most diseases are. They're usually pretty classified, pretty well understood, and there's a very strict criteria to to say that you have this. If
Right.
we're just treating obesity as a disease, it seems like we're taking the empowerment out without actually having rules, right? Which is not something that you should do.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And it's like, if we were going to do it the most accurate way, we would do body fat measurements. But obviously, that's more expensive because maybe your doctor is willing to do some skin fold testing, I think that would be the least, expensive route. But doctors don't do fucking skin fold tests because they don't have time. They're just like, how quickly can we get you in and out? Which is another problem with the system.
Yes.
So we just go off the
Oh
BMI, which
goodness.
isn't the most accurate, but it's accurate in the way that we have a lot more. Um, it's more accurate because we don't have a whole lot of over muscled people walking around. It's a thing sometimes, but it's less of an instance than the other way around. But at the same time, not the best measurement to go off of. But hopefully, doctors actually see their patients before just going off of their BMI and be like, "Yep, you qualify for GLP-1 medication." So yeah.
Yes. That would be the hope.
Yeah.
All right.
I
Well,
just had a
power talk.
random thought.
Oh
Yeah,
no, sorry.
I was gonna think, like, and also, do we classify in the future obesity as like a ratio of muscle to fat? Because there's some people who are lean but have like no muscle, and so like the fat they do have is gonna be more. It could be even more than someone who's like muscled and a little chunky. So that's also a thing that there's some people that kind of like fly under the radar where they can actually develop some of the same metabolic issues, even if it's not present from the outside. So that's another piece of information. Be like, there are some people who are going to be overlooked in the system as it being like diagnosed who probably need help, not with the GLP-1 medications, maybe not any medication at all, maybe some, blood pressure shit, diabetes or something along those lines. But that's when it's like, I wish we could prescribe, uh, you know, more exercise and stuff like that, but also be able to allow people more time to do so.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And that kind of goes back to that idea that you can't tell someone's health just by looking at them all the time. Um, even through these doctors going so fast through patients.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, also, another reason I started having a problem. Again, I don't have a problem with people who need GLP-1 medications to use them. I don't think it's cheating. I don't think there's any shame in it. But I'm starting to see like, so even the clinic I did like the at-home ketamine thing with, they're now selling GLP-1 medications, and I'm just like,
Ooh.
fuck you guys. Like, no, you're purely doing that to make money. How do you go
Yeah.
from, ketamine for mental health? Like, it just seems like they're hopping on every drug to put out there to make money. And so I'm like, cool,
It's
I'm
just
not
like
going to be,
TRT clinics popping up everywhere.
yeah, they're like mini steroid clinics. But at the same time, plus side of those, it's a little safer because you're not getting black market shit.
True.
So, but sorry, I'm done ranting. Just keep thinking of things.
Well, our basically to sum up this podcast, the system sucks and it wants to keep people obese just so we can sell them medication to make more money off them.
Hmm. Yeah, and I wish there was more that I could do, and I'm just a fucking personal trainer. I can try to help people with their personal choices, but that's about where my limitations are.
We do what we can.
Yep.
Everybody's just doing their best.
Hmm.
All right, so I got a power talk. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I feel like it is such a corny, well-known quote, but it's so true, and I feel like it fits our topic really well because I think it's really easy when you're looking down the barrel of like several year fitness journey with a lot of ups and downs, and your doctor who's more than willing to just sign a script pad, and it's really hard to choose the harder option. But I think there's you to take that single step is just that's the most important one, right? Is just that first one to get you going, getting you going down that road, and then all you got to do is keep going.
Yep. That's all you gotta do.
Forever and ever.
Like the Energizer Bunny. But you have limits on your energy because just like that Energizer Bunny, those batteries aren't actually shit.
but it's still worth it because I don't know, like some days the thing that I look forward to the most in my day is my lift, and that is kind of nice to have these days because I'm like I'm just gonna go and throw around some weights this morning after I watch whatever idiot freaking cabinet appointment just happened, and I'm gonna just get strong enough so I can feel like I could take them because
Yep.
that's what I think about when I work out is like, okay, I'm just gonna get so jacked that I can beat up homophobes and
Right.
transphobes.
Or like if someone comes at me, I'm very ready. I missed that because I'm in this forever fat loss phase and I feel real small, weak, and I'm like, this is the worst timing. Come on, I want to be big.
I want to be big and strong and scare
Yeah,
people.
but my coach he's got something against me. He wants me to stay small. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. There's a reason. It's just a painful path, but yeah.
But it's worth it because painful paths are often where you get the biggest, best rewards.
Yes, very true. So
All right, now we're definitely
we're just
getting on.
going like the Energizer
We're just
Bunny.
getting off. All right, so until next time, everybody, peace out.
Peace out.